Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. Gareth here from tastytudes.com. Throughout the first two sections of this course, we were working a lot with paper origami bird shapes. In this video, you are finally going to see exactly how I created each example. In the previous video, we learned how to decorate the paper birds and bring them into our main book cover document. Now, if we come to the finished book cover design and zoom into the top of the artwork, we can see we have a book publisher logo, Purple Bird Books. In this tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate how I created this polygonal bird logo from scratch. I'll be demonstrating the tools and the techniques I used to make it. So if you would like to take a closer look at this logo example, you can find it in the project folder. If you're new to this course, you can download the project folder for free. The link is in the description. So with the project folder open the final artwork folder and open the Purple Bird Books logo. And you should have something that looks like this. So this logo consists entirely of shape layers. If we look in the layers panel, we can see three main folders: bird, ribbon, and base. If we toggle these down, we can see all the shape layers that make up the logo. In this video, we will be using the shape tools to build this logo. So to begin, I'm going to come back to the project folder and navigate to the assets folder in the create a project folder. So in the assets folder, I'll click number 7, logo, sketch, and open in Photoshop. So this is a rough sketch of the logo I had in mind. Here I have drawn a sketch of how I want the logo to work. I have scanned this in and I can use this as a guide. Now before I start to trace my sketch, I want to set my document up so it's going to make it easier to trace. If I start to trace my sketch now, it will be hard to see the lines as the pen is quite dark. So I need to make the sketch appear lighter here. So I'll simply press Command-Shift-N to create a new layer. I'll call this white base. I'll select the white color in the foreground. I'll then use the paint bucket tool to fill the entire canvas area in white. Next, I'll come up to opacity. In the layers panel, I'll toggle this to 50%. So now the sketch is light, or appears lighter. So I'll make a start by tracing the bird. Now my idea here is to create a bird shape out of polygons. I'll be assigning a different color to each, so I'll set about creating each polygon separately. So to do this, I'm going to use the pen tool. So I'll come into the menu and select the pen tool about 2/3 of the way down. Now before I start to trace my sketch, I'm going to come up to the top left of the control panel and click the left option and set the tool mode to shape. So now when I draw with the pen tool, I'll create a shape instead of a path. So over to the right, I'll set the fill color to white and the stroke to a black and change the stroke size to 1 point. Next to the stroke size, I'll click on the stroke option. I'll be sure to select the simple stroke, and down in the alignment option, I'll set the stroke to align on the inside. Once that is done, I'll start here from the left hand side. I'll click to drop a point, then click to drop another, and then click back on the first point to make the complete shape. Notice we now have a new shape layer in the layers panel. Easy. So I chose a white fill and a thin black stroke, as this will help us start to build our artwork and focus on the shapes. Later I'll be adding color, but for now I just want to focus on the trace. So currently the shape is still active. I'll quickly press enter and this will deselect the shape. This will allow me to now click on a corner of the shape I just created without modifying it. So I'll click on the corner, click across, down, and then back across to join the shape. So right now the lines might not cross that accurately, but right now that's not a problem. I'll be coming back and tidying up this shape later. So I'll press enter to deselect the shape and draw my next shape. I'll press enter to deselect that and draw my next shape. I press enter to deselect the shape and draw my next shape. Once drawn, I'll press enter to deselect the shape, draw the next shape, press enter to deselect the shape and draw my last shape. Once drawn, I'll press enter to deselect that. So now I have all my shapes drawn. Once happy, I'll come into the Layers panel, select the top shape layer, press and hold Shift, select the bottom shape layer and press Command G to group them into their own layer folder and call this Polygon Bird. So now I'm going to add some colour. So I'll come back into the project folder. In the Create a Project folder, I'll open the Origami Bird logo folder and open the colour swatch inside. I press Command A to select all, Command C to copy, then Command W to close the document. Back in the sketch document, I'll press Command V to paste, and I'll place my swatch just under the bird and make sure this is set to the top of my layer structure. So with the Move tool, I'll right click on the far left shape, select the layer from the menu and press A. This will select the shape and activate the fill and stroke options up in the control panel. So I'll come up and click on Fill. Now in the menu that appears, I'll click on the far right on the colour spectrum icon. Upon click, up will pop the colour picker menu. But now I'll move my mouse cursor over a colour on the swatch and select it. Then press OK on the colour picker menu. So now the fill is the purple colour, but I still have the stroke. So I'll click on the stroke colour in the control panel and set it to transparent. Now we have a solid colour polygon. So I'll use this technique to apply the colour to the rest of the shapes. I'll press V to activate the Move tool, right click on the next shape, select it from the menu, press A to select the shape, come up to the control panel, on the fill colour, click on the spectrum, move my mouse cursor into the swatch to select a colour and press OK. Then click on the stroke colour and set to transparent. So I'm going to continue around the bird, selecting each shape and setting a new colour selected from the swatch below. Soon I will have something that looks like this. So now I'm going to reflect on the current shapes and fine-tune the points. As we can see, it's not perfect. So I'll press V to activate the Move tool. I'll right click on a shape to quickly select it from the menu. I'll then press A to activate the Direct Selection tool. Now, if the Path Selection tool, the black arrow, is activated instead of the Direct Selection tool, simply come into the menu, click and hold on the Path Selection tool and select the Direct Selection tool, the white arrow. So with the Direct Selection tool, I can click on the shape and then click on the anchor points that make up the shape. I can click on these and drag them around to place them into a new position. So now I'll click the anchor points that need to connect cleanly with the adjacent shape. I'll drag them right up close like so. So once happy, I'll move on to the next shape. I'll press V to activate the Move tool, right click on the shape, select it from the menu, then press A to activate the Direct Selection tool. I'll click the shape and click and drag on the corner points where they need to be closer to the adjacent shape. I'll come to the next shape, I'll press V to activate the Move tool, right click on the shape, select it from the menu, then press A to activate the Direct Selection tool. I'll click the shape, click and drag on the corner points where they need to be closer to the adjacent shape. So I'll continue around my polygonal bird shape, selecting the shapes and using the Direct Selection tool to fine-tune the positioning of the anchor points for a seamless composition. Soon, I'll end up with something that looks like this. Perfect. So that completes the polygon bird. So next I'll create the ribbon section of the logo. So I'll select the swatch and move it out of the way all the way down to the bottom for now. I'll start by coming into the Shape tool and selecting the Rectangular Shape tool. Just like earlier, I'll make sure my fill colour is set to white and my stroke set to black. Then I'll click and drag out a shape like so, and I'll try to get a similar shape to my sketch. Upon release, if the shape is not perfect, I can simply press Command T to activate the free transform and just drag out the corners to make the shape I want. Once happy, I press Enter. So under the top part, we can see a triangle section. With the rectangle tool, I'll just drag out another square shape and place it under the block above. I'll press Command T and drag the points to line up as close to the sketch as possible. So now we have this box, but we need a triangle. Well, now I'm going to come into the pen tool, click and hold and select the delete anchor point tool. I'll move down over the bottom right of the box and click on the bottom right point to remove it. This shape will now become the triangle I need. Perfect. So lastly, I need to create the bottom part of the ribbon. So I'll draw another rectangle shape, then move it over and again use free transform to position it over the drawing as close as possible. I'll then move the shape down in the layers panel behind the two shapes I created previously. This time I'll come to the pen tool, click and hold and select the add anchor point tool. I'll move over to the far right line of the box and click to add a point about half the way down. The new point will become selected and I'll just press left a few times on the keyboard on the arrow key to move the point in to create the indent. Now for some reason my line is now curved. I want this straight, so I'll now select the direct selection tool, click on the handles and drag them back into the anchor point to take away the curve to make them straight. Great. So now I have the right part of the ribbon. So at this point I'll add some colour. I'll press V to activate the move tool, right click on a shape, select it from the menu, press A to select the shape. Up in the control panel I'll select the colour, select the spectrum and choose a colour from the swatch below and change the stroke colour to transparent. So I'll do this to the next two shapes and soon I'll have them filled with colour. So I'll zoom in and make sure they are nicely aligned in relation to the larger box above with the move tool. Once I'm happy with the positioning, I'll come into the layers panel and select both the dark triangle and the bottom ribbon part together. With the move tool activated, I'll press and hold Alt and click and drag over to the left to quickly duplicate the shape layers. Next, I'll come up to Edit, scroll down to Transform and select Flip Horizontal. Then I'll place them carefully into place under the left side of the larger box above. So now I'm going to add type to the logo. So I'll press T to activate the type tool. I'll click on top of the ribbon like so. Now for you to follow along with this part, you will need the fonts installed. By now you should have the fonts installed from the previous episodes, though if you don't have them installed or you're new to this course, you can find the instructions in the project folder. So up in the control panel, I'll type League into the font name and select League Spartan. I'll set the font size to 50 points. I'll come over to the right and click on the coloured square to choose a colour. I'll move my mouse cursor into the dark colour of the ribbon and choose it with the eyedropper and click OK and begin to type. I'll type Purple Bird in lowercase with a capital P and B. I'll select the move tool in the menu and attempt to move it above the ribbon like so. On this occasion, if the type is too large, I'll press Command T to activate free transform and scale the type down and place on top of the ribbon. Now depending on where the type layer is in the layer structure, I'll make sure it's set to the top like so. Next I'll select the type layer. With the move tool I'll press and hold Alt and click and drag down to quickly duplicate the type layer. I'll press T to activate the type tool. I'll click into the type and select all and type books in caps. I'll select all the type, click on the square in the control panel and select a white colour. I'll deselect the type by pressing and holding Command plus D and press Enter. Now this word could be bigger in the ribbon, so I'll press Command T to scale the word up like so. I'll press T to click back into the type. I'll select all, but this time come into the character panel and click and drag on the tracking symbol to add a little more space between the letters. I'll deselect the type by pressing and holding Command plus D and press Enter. And now we have the type and ribbon section looking good. So I'll come into the layers panel, select the top type layer, press Shift and select the bottom shape layer that makes up the ribbon. I'll press Command G and name this group ribbon. So now we have the ribbon and the bird section complete. If the bird is not correctly positioned at this time, I'll select the folder and move it into place like so. So next, I'm going to create the background ellipse and the stroke effect. Now, I want the inside ellipse to be inside the solid white. Currently, it's going to be hard to do this as the background is white. So I'll come down to the white base layer we set earlier in the layers panel. I'll select it. I'll double click on the grey area just to the right of the layer name in the layers panel. Upon click, up will pop the layer styles menu. So I'll quickly add a colour overlay to this and select a very light grey from the colour. Just enough so I'll be able to see my white ellipse on top shortly, and click OK. So with the white base layer selected, I'll now come into the menu and select the ellipse shape tool. This time I'll make sure the fill is set to white and the stroke is set to transparent up in the control panel. Then I'll click and drag out like so to create an ellipse. Once created, I'll press Command T to activate Free Transform and just tweak the size and positioning. Once happy, I'll press Enter. So here we can clearly see the white ellipse on top of the grey background. So at this point, we no longer need the sketch layer visible. So in the Layers panel, I'll toggle the visibility of this to off. So the last thing I want to do is create the stroke effect around the white ellipse. So I'll click on the new ellipse shape layer and press Command J to duplicate it. I'll press A to select the shape. Then up in the control panel, I'll set the fill color to transparent. I'll click on the stroke, click on the spectrum and choose a dark purple from the ribbon. In the stroke properties, I'll select the dashed line. Down in the alignment options, I'll set the stroke to middle. I'll click on more options and set the dash to every 4 and the gap to 2 and click OK. Next, I'll set the point size to 3. Next, I'll press Command T to activate Free Transform, press and hold Shift and Alt and click and drag the top right corner out to scale out the stroke so there is a gap between the white ellipse and the stroke. I'll tweak the size accordingly and press Enter. After further tweaking of the logo elements, we will now have the logo complete and ready to place into the main book cover design. Lastly, I'll toggle the visibility of the white base layer and the color swatch, so now the logo is set on a completely transparent background. So now I'll press Command S to save. I'll navigate to my project folder in the project folder and save this as Origami logo and click OK. Once saved, I'll close the document. Once we have saved the document, we now need to come back to the main book cover document. And now I'm going to bring in the new logo into this composition and place it at the top of the cover. So I'll come up to File and click Place Embedded. If you're using an older version of Photoshop, this will just be Place. So I'll navigate to my project folder in the project folder. I'll choose the Origami logo file and click Place. Upon click, the creative will appear in my document as a smart object. So before I do anything else, I'll press Command : to activate the guides. With the new logo layer selected, I'll press Command T to activate the Free Transform and scale down. I'll drag the logo up to the top and make sure it's properly aligned to the center and the top of the logo does not cross into the main margin. So I'll again apply Free Transform and toggle the size until I have something I am happy with. So now we can see that the type here is too close to the logo. So in the Layers panel, I'll select the header folder and move it down. Now if the header appears to be too close to the birds, I'll press Command T and scale down the header composition slightly. Okay, so I am now happy with the positioning of the logo and the header, but now we have a little problem. For some reason, my clouds are being cut off around the edges and are no longer bleeding to the edge of my document area. So why is this? Well, earlier in the course, we brought in the header as a smart object, just like we did with the logo. Now the canvas area of that smart object is cropping the clouds here. For example, I'll come into the Layers panel, click into the header folder and double click on the header smart object thumbnail. Upon click, the smart object will open and we can see the current canvas area around the composition. So this is what is cropping the creative in the main document. So a simple way to resolve this is to increase the canvas size of this document right here. So I'll come up to Image, Canvas Size. Upon click, I'll see my current canvas size. I'll just add another 50mm to the width and the height of the canvas size and click OK. Upon click, we can see a lot more around the area of the document. So I'll press Command W to close the document and save. So back in the main cover design document, we can see that now the header is no longer cropped because the canvas size on the smart object has been increased. Nice. So I'll press Command T again on the header smart object and just toggle the size and positioning until I have a composition I am happy with. And then press Enter to commit. If I need to, I'll also toggle the size of the logo. So I'll come into the Layers panel, select the Logo Smart Object layer, press Command G to group it and name the folder Logo. I'll right click, assign a red color and make sure it's at the top of my layer structure, and press Command S to save my document. So that's how you can create a logo completely out of shapes in Adobe Photoshop. Now all that's left to do to our cover design is add the type. In the next video, we are going to add the finishing touches to the book cover design. We are going to add the type. See you in the next video.